Hi, everybody. It's Mike Swanson here in Nashville, Tennessee. Thanks so much for joining us today to hear about the ins and outs of trucking litigation. I think you'll really benefit from being with us today. We thank you. You will get a recording after this webinar, and we'll be introducing Michael Cowen in just a moment. But first, a few housekeeping items. I'm Mike Swanson. This is me. I'm the president, CEO of Advocate Capital. I'm speaking to you live from the Advocate Capital studios here in Nashville, Tennessee today. I am also the author of a book called How David Beats Goliath. It's the only finance training book for plaintiff lawyers. If you'd like a copy, message me. Find me on our website, advocatecapital.com. I'm happy to send a copy to you. Disclaimer, okay, you have to have this, right? So this webinar is for informational purposes only. It's designed to give you some things to think about, talk about, but if you're gonna make certain actions or not take certain actions, make sure you consult with your lawyer or your separate accounting professional. Full disclosure, I mentioned I'm the CEO of Advocate Capital. We are the purveyors of the AvoTrack case expense funding service, and we are bringing this webinar to you free of charge today. We like to bring special guests to plaintiff lawyers through these webinars to help you get even better results for your clients. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our special guest today. He is Mr. Michael Cowen. He is a partner and attorney at Cowen, Rodriguez, and Peacock. He has over 20 years of experience trying cases, especially trucking cases, and amazingly has had over 100 trials. He's on the board of directors of the Texas Trialers Association, a Texas super lawyer, and top 50 personal injury lawyers. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I know how busy you are. Every time I see you on Facebook, you're speaking in another state somewhere. You must get a lot of frequent flyer miles.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we appreciate you taking time out to be with us today. How did you decide to become a plaintiff's lawyer, Michael?
That's an interesting question because before I went to law school, I swore I would never be a plaintiff's lawyer. I actually, my uncle was chief of staff for a state senator that got elected on a tort reform platform. And before I started law school, I had dinner with the founder of Citizens Against Lawsuit Abuse and promised I would not be a plaintiff's lawyer. But then when I was in law school, I got a part-time job at a plaintiff's firm and really liked it. And I graduated from law school. I clerked on the Fifth Circuit. I went to a gigantic law firm in New York City, and realized I really liked doing plaintiff's work a lot better. I enjoyed the work I did as a law clerk at a plaintiff's firm a lot more than the work I did as an associate at a big law firm. And so in '97, I switched sides, moved back to Texas and switched sides.
Yeah, and I imagine being on the defense side for so long really helped you in your plaintiff's practice.
Well, actually, in corporate litigation, it's not really plaintiff or defense. It was more like big bank suing big bank.
Oh, I see. Okay, that makes sense. Great. Did you have any explaining to do when you went back on your your pledge not to be a...
No, not at all.
Great. Well, let's talk about our topic today, and that is trucking, ins and outs of trucking accident cases. So, what's the difference, right? Whether a car crashes or a truck crashes, what's the difference?
Well, I mean, the biggest difference is you have a corporate defendant typically, or at least a business involved, and it lets you tell the whole story. Because in a lot of car wreck cases, it's just about what happened. Did somebody rear end somebody? Were they paying attention? In a truck crash case, you can get into why did it happen? So why did this 18-wheeler driver not know how to safely make a right turn? Why did this 18-wheeler driver not keep the proper following distance? Why did he work too many hours and fall asleep while he was driving? And because we get to go into the why, we get to go into corporate policies. It opens up evidence into the truck driver's driving record. If he's got a bad driving record, why was this guy on the road to start with? So you get to have a lot more evidence in the case than you would. The other thing is there's a whole set of regulations you need to learn and other industry materials you need to learn to properly do a trucking case that you frankly don't need to do a car wreck case. Car wreck cases are a lot simpler, but if you do a trucking case right, the same injury is worth a lot more money.
Wow. Yeah, because you have that corporation back behind there. So how, in these cases, how do you get this information? What are some of the investigative techniques you use to uncover some of these policies and things like that?
Well, some of it is the formal discovery process. So you send requests for production, you take depositions. Other things you can just get on the internet. So there's a website called SAFER that the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration has. And for every trucking company, you can just put in their name or the DOT number. And a couple clicks away, you get not only what the proper corporation name is, how many trucks they have, who their insurance company is, but then you click on something else, you get their safety history, so you can get all the citations and violations for trucking regulation violations that they and their drivers have had for the last 2 years.
Wow.
And you can also see how they compare to other members of the industry on a kind of a percentage basis, whether they're the top or the bottom. And
wow,
that gives you a lot of information just right there before you even file the lawsuit.
that's amazing. What's the URL for that again?
I just Google FMCSA Safer because they changed it recently.
Okay, great. Well, we'll track it down after this, and when we create the video, we'll put the URL to that for our viewers.
I can just look it up real quick too, but it's
okay, sure.
since I'm on the computer.
Yeah, great. Thanks. This is live. The beauty of live webinars. You can tap into your computer as we're speaking here.
So it is safer, safer.fmcsa.dot.gov.
Got it. Thank you so much for looking that up on the fly for us. We appreciate it. We will put that in the text below the video of this webinar. For those of you who have to leave early or folks who didn't attend today, we'll be sending a video on about that. Okay, let's talk about that. How do you make the case about the trucking company and not just the driver? That's a little bit of what you're saying before, I guess.
Yeah, and it's a little bit, and I'd like to also go a little bit more into the why.
Okay,
but
great.
I'll do the how first. The how is, there's a trial consultant named Rodney Jew. He's been transformational in my practice, and one of the things
What's
he
his name
says
again?
is Rodney Jew, Jew.
Okay.
He's out in Napa, California.
Oh, okay.
And he is just incredible. But one of the things he says is it's not about what happened, it's about why it happened. And so what you need to do is not just look at what the immediate cause of the wreck was, what the driver did wrong, but try to go back and find what is the root cause of the wreck. What is it? Why was a driver doing this thing to begin with? What is it that put such a driver on the road?
Right.
And we use actually something from manufacturing to do this. It's a technique called the 5 whys. Mr. Toyota, he actually founded the company that became Toyota Motors. Came up with this when he had I think they were doing textile manufacturing at the time. And so he wouldn't just there'd be something that went wrong in the assembly line. He wouldn't just say, well, why did this happen and fix it? He would try to find what is the underlying root cause of this problem, where if we solve that, we keep this problem and similar problems from happening in the future. So I'll give an example. Like, let's say you have a rear end collision case. You think, well, that's a simple case, driver error. But how do we make that about the company? Well, think of it. So this is just an example. Different rear end collision cases are going to have a different analysis. But in this one that we had, why did the truck rear end the car in front of it? And in this particular case, because he was following too closely, because he didn't have time to hit his brakes because he was following too closely. Why was he following too closely? Well, he was following too closely because he didn't know how to determine the proper following distance. That's something the truck driver is supposed to know. This driver didn't know that it's so many seconds and how to count the seconds and how to measure that. Why didn't the driver know that? Well, the driver didn't know that because a trucking company chose to put him on the road without making sure he knew that. Why did they do that? Because they chose not to train, test, evaluate the driver. And then why did they do that? Because they chose not to spend company resources to train and test and evaluate their drivers. Now we have it's the company's decision to not just put this driver, but all of their drivers on the road. So they're not just endangering this one plaintiff, they're endangering everybody, including the jurors.
Including the jurors, I like that.
That motivates people to give a better verdict.
I love how you tied that into the jurors. I've heard the jury described as a panel of community members who get to decide what they're going to accept, what is acceptable behavior in their community. It's extremely democratic when you think about it.
Oh, absolutely. But, there's a famous writer, I can't remember if it's Faulkner or someone else says, the story's not about the listener, they won't listen. And the trial really needs to be about the jurors, things that matter to them. And, companies that have other drivers on the road that haven't learned the lesson this guy learned in this trial, that's a danger to the jury. And if you don't, the only power they have to protect themselves is through a verdict. That's the whole basis of the David Ball, Don Keenan reptile stuff. And so if you can make the case about the trucking company's choices to endanger the public by not following the rules, then it's a much bigger case than just someone wasn't paying attention and hit the car in front of them.
Yeah, that's great. One of the things I think people don't really understand is if you don't see it, you don't think about it, the hidden benefits of the work that plaintiff lawyers do. Obviously, they're the visible benefits, the benefit for the plaintiff, the impact on the corporation to be a better corporate citizen, but all the injuries and deaths that are prevented from the work that you and other plaintiff lawyers do. You can't tangibly point to that, but it's real.
It is, and that's one of the reasons why it's so important to work up your trucking cases and see if there is corporate negligence, because we need to make the bad companies pay more so that they have an economic incentive through their insurance rates going up to either clean up or get out of business and let someone who'll do it right take over.
Wow, you have a lot of unique angles on that. I like that. Most people would just say you need to work up your case to get a bigger fee, but it's about getting, obviously for your plaintiff, but having them pay the maximum that they should pay for having made bad decisions.
Yeah, I'm idealistic. If I just cared about the money, I would have stayed at a Wall Street firm.
Right.
And it was a lot easier to make money there, to be honest, and no risk.
Right.
Their billing rates are insanely high. But I like this work because not only do I get to make a good living, but I feel like I do make a difference, not just in the client's life, but we do try to make things safer.
And you do that the entire trial bar does it. So thank you.
Yeah.
We appreciate what you're doing for that. So
a couple before we move to the this is perfect actually. The next slide's perfect. I'm sorry.
Is that good, or should I go
perfect.
back?
Yeah, no, it's perfect.
So how do you find and use regulations and standards to prove your case?
Sure. Well, there's one, you need to learn the basics. If you're going to do trucking litigation, there's some basic things you need to learn. I recommend going to some seminars. The Academy of Truck Accident Attorneys puts on a symposium every September. It's like 3 days. Everything you need to know for the basics of trucking litigation, and even some advanced stuff is covered there.
Could you say that one again for our viewers? What is it called again?
Sure. The Academy of Truck Accident Attorneys.
Okay.
It's a wonderful organization, great seminar. I took my whole firm, paralegals and lawyers, there a few weeks ago.
Wow.
The AAJ Trucking Litigation Group puts on good programs. I also have coming up, I don't know if we have any spaces available, but if they check my website, we have Cowen's Big Rig Boot Camp, where I do a 1-day boot camp telling you everything you need to know to handle a trucking case. And we give out the forms, and we don't charge for that one, as opposed to the other ones do have a fair charge. It's not outrageous charges.
Wait, it's free of charge?
Free of charge. All I want to do is make sure people if they're going to do them, that they do them right.
Right. And where does that boot camp take place?
We have 2 coming up. We have one in San Antonio, which is sold out, and we have one in McAllen, Texas, in October. And I think we may have a few seats left. I'm not sure.
Okay. We'll try to get that information and put it again below the link in the video.
Just go to cowenlaw.com, cowenlaw.com, then get more information. So that's the first. You got to have an idea of what's out there.
Right.
But basically, the universe of materials that you'll use once you get your case is, first of all, there's the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, and these are the regulations that govern trucking companies, truck drivers, and anyone else that works in trucking. That covers a lot of things, what they have to do to what they call qualified drivers, see if that person should be driving a truck. That has some requirements to instruct, which we take as training requirements. It has how many hours they can drive, how they have to maintain the vehicle. So some very basic things. That's something you need to know at least enough to look through the index and spot the issues. Then every state has a commercial driver's license manual, and what had happened is that the DOT made a model manual, and every state adopts it, and they're 95% the same from state to state.
Okay.
That has the real details about how you need to drive a truck. So what the following distance needs to be, how to make a turn, those kind of things. On top of that, you get the textbooks that they use in truck driving schools. And they have a lot of things. There's 2 main ones. There's a J.J. Keller, J.J. and K-E-L-L-E-R. There's another one by Alice Adams, A-D-A-M-S. You can get those online at a website, www.jjkeller.com. Those are really helpful. Then you network with other plaintiff lawyers. You get the driver handbooks and training manuals from other trucking companies. And you also get there's something called the Smith system, which is a defensive driving for commercial drivers. You get those materials.
Now, how do you get their manual, the company's manuals?
Basically, you have to go find another plaintiff lawyer to give you a copy if it's not this company you're suing. Through these organizations like the ATAA and the Trucking Litigation Group, we share with each other. So you don't have to bring us in on a case. If you have a case, and let's say you have a case where a truck driver made a U-turn and caused a wreck, well, that's really dangerous. And there's a lot of the major trucking companies do not allow their drivers to make U-turns, period, on public roads because it is so dangerous. And so when the defendant says, well, there's no law against making a U-turn, there's nothing wrong with making a U-turn, you can bring out 30 or 40 driver manuals from other companies saying never make a U-turn, you will be terminated if you do so.
Wow.
That's powerful stuff, but that's the power of sharing with each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic. Awesome. Well, how do you find aggravated liability facts to maximize the value, Michael?
Well, you keep digging. And so what we do is, you start from the beginning. I mean, if you get out there early enough, can you go see the truck before, people get to it and fix it? Go look to see what's inside the truck. Do they have a bunch of Red Bull cans? Are there prescription medications? You look to see were they using a mobile device. I mean, you see truck drivers all the time. They're watching a video on their phone. They're texting. They're posting on Facebook. I joined somehow they let me into some truck driver group on Facebook, and they're constantly posting videos while they're driving.
Is that right?
You look at, should this person have been driving? So you look at their driving record, you look at their history, you look for false documents. One thing that really gets a jury mad is lying. And so, like, we'll get cases where one of the things the trucking company has to do is they have to check with the prior employers for the past so many years to make sure that they didn't have any problems with the prior company. Well, a lot of times they'll check, we got this form, here's the form filled out by the other company that says there's nothing wrong. Well, when we subpoena the file from the other company, the prior employer, not only will there be no record of them ever having checked, but they would have failed a drug test or had a crash and been fired or something like that. You get their logs to see, when they were say they were driving, when they said they were sleeping, and then you get every other document with a date or a time or GPS records and show that they were lying and driving more hours than allowed by law. But that's what you're really looking for is those kind of things, and then making it about the company to show that the company doesn't care.
Well, talk about GPS a little bit. What are the sources of GPS data that are available to a trucking lawyer now?
Okay, well, there's all kinds. It just depends. It's called telematics is the name for the systems that trucking companies use, and they're not required. The bigger the company, the more likely you are to find something. So there are some systems where they actually have a GPS device on the vehicle that's constantly sending things back to the trucking company. They can monitor in real time where the truck is, and they can also go back and recreate it. So you can see, sometimes minute by minute where the truck is versus where they say it is. And
wow,
we have cases where people, they said they were sleeping in one state, and while they're supposedly sleeping, the truck's moving in another state. Even with these new electronic logs, they find ways to turn it off or change the data afterwards.
Yeah, and what is the company's? Let's talk about the interests. Are the company's interests aligned with the drivers? Is it pay for the companies to look the other way when the drivers are falsifying logs and things like that?
Yeah, actually, the way the trucking industry works is it creates a real perverse incentive for drivers to break the rules, because the drivers get paid by the mile. Okay. And you think about it, well, you're a driver, you get paid by the mile. The problem is, if you are stuck in traffic, you make almost nothing. If you have to wait 3 hours before they load your truck, you don't make any money while you're sitting there, but that counts against the number of hours you could work that day. If you have to go get your truck fixed, the time that the truck's being in for repair, that's on duty time, counts against your hour, the 14 hours you can work per day. And so what happens is, in order to make enough money to survive and to support a family, since you're getting paid by the mile, you have to cheat, and you have to drive more hours than are required by law, or you have to speed up and drive faster. And and have you ever worked a 14-hour day?
Me? Maybe when I was young.
Okay. Well, as a lawyer, I do every now and then. It wipes you out. Well, truck drivers are allowed to work 14-hour days every day, driving up to 11 hours of them, but then they have to cheat to work even more hours. They're worn out. It's a tough job, and they are treated. They're treated bad. They're pushed hard. They're underpaid, and that's really why making about the company and not about the poor driver. He's just trying to make a living, or she's trying to make a living.
Yeah.
Now, they still shouldn't break the rules, but it's the companies that are driving to do them. If they would pay them fairly, and pay them, let's say, by a salary, or pay them by the hour, then they could afford to follow the rules.
So FLSA doesn't kick in, the Federal Labor Standards Act?
Nope. And they all make enough money where they'd make more than minimum wage anyway. But no, just
in terms of overtime or paying by the hour, not by the mile, that just sounds...
Not at all. No, they pay by the mile. That's
terrible.
the industry.
It'd be nice to break that up someday, but good luck, right?
Well, there's some litigation in California on meal rest breaks, but then the current administration is trying to amend the regulations to take away the state's rights to do anything about it.
Wow. Crazy. Well, hey, you okay if we take a few questions, Mike?
Sure.
Great. So we're going to open it up for questions. Folks, as you're looking at your dialog box for the GoToWebinar, there's a questions block. We will keep them anonymous, so don't feel that you might ask a bad question or a silly question. No such thing as a bad question. While we're waiting for some questions to come in, this is Michael's contact information. His website, as he mentioned before, is Cowen Law. There's his phone number. Michael also has a terrific podcast called Trial Lawyer Nation Podcast. Mike, while we're waiting for questions to come in, can you tell us a little bit about the podcast?
Sure. I kind of started this on a lark, and it's turned into, we have almost 2,000 unique listeners every episode now, mostly plaintiffs' lawyers. And I just got into podcasts on my own, listening to them, and decided I really wanted one that spoke to me as a trial lawyer, and I couldn't find one at the time that I really liked. And so I just started reaching out to other great lawyers and got them to agree to talk to me. And so we do some that are just us talking within the firm about ideas we have, but at least every other episode is a different guest. And we've had everywhere from, if you want to talk about trucking lawyers, like Joe Freed, Mike Leeserman, Matthew Wright, who I think's been on yours.
Yeah, we know Matt.
Trial consultants like David Ball, just all kinds of people in between, marketing people, law firm management people. And what we're really trying to do is just, one, whatever can help me and I can get something out of it by talking to the person, but two, trying to provide useful information that's practical for people that are practicing our type of law.
That's awesome. And that's why we do what we do. You know, a rising tide lifts all boats. And we love helping plaintiff lawyers. They're so misunderstood. And the benefits they offer to society are so great that's kind of why we do things like this. Unfortunately, as we were getting started with the Q&A, we had technical difficulties. So we got all of your questions. We had Michael answer them, and you'll see those below the video here on both YouTube and Vimeo. Let me give you my contact information. If I can ever be helpful to any of you, I would love to do so. This is my contact information here. My email address, you can call our toll-free number. To learn more about Advocate Capital, visit our website. If you'd like to see other webinars we've done, visit our videos page and click on the webinars quick link, and it'll take you down to the bottom of that. And with that, we're going to say thank you for joining us today from Nashville, Tennessee. This is Mike Swanson, and stay tuned and watch for that email. We'll get those questions answered for you. Thank you.